Hey guys, I'm Oscar Mikey, and this is going to be my review of the AS Val in Modern Warfare. I've been playing pretty much exclusively with this gun ever since Season 6 dropped, and I'm going to give you guys my final thoughts on it here in this video, along with 3 builds using different attachments to make it work in multiple scenarios. Firstly, I want to give a very brief history of the real-life version of this rifle, because honestly I just find that kind of thing super interesting. So the AS Val was developed in the 80s in Soviet Russia. It's an AK patterned rifle, it's chambered in 9x39mm, and it can fire semi-auto and at a crazy 900 rounds per minute in full auto. It sports a paddle magazine release, just like a lot of other AKs. It's got a humongous suppressor over the barrel, and the charging handle with safety levers on the right side. Unlike most AKs, however, the fire selector is actually behind the trigger instead of being built into the safety lever. Apparently this thing is pretty expensive to manufacture, and so it's used mainly by Russian special forces. There aren't many in the field, and these are primarily Spetsnaz units. But it's also used by the FSB, GRU, and some units in the Russian army. The entire idea behind the development of the AS Val and its subsonic 9x39 cartridge was to make a weapon system that was highly effective at 2 things: stealth and armor penetration. The 9x39 cartridge was proven to be very effective at armor penetration, with SP6 in particular able to punch through 30 layers of Kevlar at 100 meters. That's kind of insane. And the suppressed Val itself demonstrated extreme effectiveness through multiple conflicts like the First and Second Chechen Wars, and the Syrian Civil War, which is still raging to this day. The subsonic 9x39 ammo combined with the enormous suppressor make it a very quiet firing gun. It's been reported by operators who have experience with it that the Val is just a joy to use, and many of them prefer it over other rifles in their arsenal. Now, of course, in a video game, things are different. A lot of things can get lost in translation, so to speak. So how close is the Val in Modern Warfare to its real-life counterpart in terms of looks and functionality? Well, in terms of appearance, it nails the look and feel of the real-life rifle. It's got a couple of extra rails on the barrel for attachments like lasers, but besides that, it looks like the stock rifle for sure. And in terms of performance and handling, although I can't speak from personal experience because I've never fired the real-life rifle, I think it performs pretty much exactly how I expected it to, based on the data that I've read about the real thing. In-game, it shoots fast, it hits hard, and it kicks high. So before I started building with this rifle, I felt like I needed to understand what its limitations were. In the previous video I made on the Val, I mentioned the 3 major caveats with this gun, and those are the recoil, the bullet velocity, and its magazine capacity. Starting with the mags, at its base it only holds 20 rounds, and I bashed it pretty hard for that in my previous video. But the funny thing is, the more I played with it, the less I was bothered by it. In core multiplayer, I found most engagements I fought were against 2 enemies maximum, 2 or less, and the rifle had no problem dropping 2 players within 20 rounds. It did very well in that respect. Reloading is pretty quick anyway, and my playstyle is relatively cautious. I try to stick to cover and I don't sprint too often, so reloading wasn't much of a problem for me. However, adding the 30 round mags would definitely be a nice cushion for more aggressive playstyles. So now onto the recoil. It's relatively easy to tame, and my preference is to add the angled foregrip or the commando foregrip to give a boost to recoil stabilization, which I think affects bullet spread during prolonged automatic fire. There's also a stat called recoil control, but I think that only applies to the first shot fired. I haven't confirmed this, but that's what I've read online. Now the last weakness of the Val is a big one. The bullet velocity is slow. Running stock, you can watch to your shots drop below the iron sights starting at around 50 meters. At longer ranges with the basic ammo, you really need to aim high and lead your target far because of this issue. This, the lack of high-capacity magazines, and the more intense perceived recoil at range is why I don't believe this gun is going to be the new meta in Warzone. It's just simply not made for fighting at those distances. I can maybe see it being used as an overkill secondary for close quarters fighting, but honestly a meta M4 or Grau, or an SMG like the MP7 or Bison, are probably going to be equally or more effective. But for the core multiplayer, it's a completely different story. When the gap between you and your target closes, all those negative traits start to shrink. The recoil becomes less of a problem because your target is bigger, you're more likely to land your shots, so running out of ammo happens less, and the bullet velocity isn't as important because the distance to your targets is much less. In these scenarios, the Val absolutely sings. It's incredibly effective for short to medium range fighting. It kind of straddles the line between assault rifle and SMG. It ties with the M13 for fastest fire rate, but its heavy 9x39 ammo does more damage than all of the 5.56 rifles. It ties for damage with the AMAX, and it's only slightly below the SCAR, the AK-47, and the FAL in terms of damage. Of course, the Odin is still king when it comes to damage, but the Val really is a beast. It just needs to be used in the right conditions. So with all that in mind, I have two builds to show you today. The first is a great all-purpose build that improves the gun's stats across the board. This is my personal favorite build, and I use it whenever I'm playing the core multiplayer. So starting with the barrel. It kinda kills me to do this because I really like the look of the stock barrel, but the VLK 200mm gives a healthy boost to damage range and bullet velocity, two pretty big problem areas for this gun. Next is the angled foregrip or the commando foregrip, which gives me more controlled recoil when going full auto. Very nice for taking on enemies that are slightly further away. I love this grip in particular because it's the only one that helps recoil, but doesn't have an ADS penalty. It's pretty dope. Then to round the whole thing out, I just spec'd it for ADS speed. So that's going with the TAC laser, Stovall 6P30 stock, and the stippled grip tape. All of these increase ADS speed with pretty minor penalties. The result is a weapon that's snappy, powerful, and easy to control. And again, I wasn't bothered all that much by the 20-round magazines because of the power of the rounds this thing uses. But if that's something you find you can't live without, it's very easy to swap that out with one of the other parts and you'll still have a very capable rifle. Also, the iron sights on the Val are very, very clean. It's very clear to see through them, and I didn't really feel like I needed an optic for this. The next build is what I came up with for distance fighting. I kind of had a difficult time with this one because no matter what I did, I couldn't find a decent balance between mobility, control, and range. I had to make a huge sacrifice in one of those areas. But in the end, this is what I made. The VLK 200mm for bullet velocity and damage range, the commando foregrip for recoil stabilization, 10-round SPP mags for lots of improvements to damage, ADS speed, penetration, and mobility, rubber grip tape for recoil control, and finally the 4x flip hybrid sight. Now I'm pretty sure I'm going to get a lot of flack for this last one because it isn't a popular sight, but I like it because of the versatility. I've got the 4x scope for distance, and I also have a 1x dot sight for closer stuff. I also want to mention the VLK Strelok stock. So this thing gives a huge boost to accuracy and control, but it also takes a big bite out of mobility. So because this build is more of a DMR and less of a sniper or hunting style bolt rifle, I decided that it was more important to keep the mobility. So when I keep that extra ADS speed, I can aim and shoot really quick and then run. I'm able to be much more mobile and it's easier to stay in cover and stuff. But hey, if you use the Strelok stock, please let me know in the comments how you balanced it out with other attachments. I'd really like to know. So now on to the final build. This one is based off the real-life cousin of the AS Val called the VSS Venturas. It's basically a sniper variant of the AS Val with slightly different furniture, similar to that of the SVD. In-game it has a PSO or Dragunov scope, the VLK Vintaz stock, 10-round SPP mags, and I added the rubber grip tape and the sleight of hand perk because I couldn't apply any other attachments without ruining the look of the VSS Venturas. I'm not exactly sure how practical this build is in actual gameplay. I think my DMR build might be a little bit better, to be honest, but I thought it was cool and it would be fun to include. I think it looks pretty snappy too. So those are my builds for the AS Val. One all-rounder, one for range fighting, and the VSS Ventura is a nice little bonus one. I didn't really think that the shorter barrels were worth using because of their negative effects on range and velocity, but if you guys have builds using them, I'd love to see them. So in conclusion, I think the Val is a great addition to the game. It's definitely my new favorite assault rifle. I'm going to be maining this thing for a long time. I don't think I'll be bringing it into Warzone very much, but you know what? For the normal core multiplayer, and especially for hardcore, this thing tears shit up. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please consider leaving a like or even a dislike. It really helps me with feedback and discoverability on YouTube. I'll talk to you in the next one, and until then, game on, my friends.